Someone asked me to tell the story of Mobutu Sese Seko, the former Congolese dictator, and I said, why not? Where do we start? His infamous house-turned death or his early childhood? Let's go with the former. Mobutu was born in 1930 to Marie, a hotel maid, and Alberic, a Belgian judge, cook. Alberic, Mobutu's father, would die when he was just 8 years, and like a proper African setup, Mobutu's uncle and grandfather would step up to equip him with all necessary life skills. The judge's wife, whom Alberic had been working for before his death, would educate him. He was sharp in class and co-curricular activities. He would later join the army, and his earlier strict Christian values imposed by the Catholic Church would be washed away. While in the army, he would contribute political views in a newspaper called Actualités Africaines, or simply African News. In 1956, he ditched the army to become a full-time journalist, this time for the famous Leopoldville. Come 1958, Mobutu would move to Belgium, Congo's colonizer, for extensive training in journalism. While in Belgium, Mobutu met Patrice Lumumba, and that changed his mindset. The Belgian propaganda that he was churning every day would die, and he would be charged to liberate Congo. He became so close to Lumumba, pushing for Congo's just cause. Do you remember this speech that Patrice Lumumba gave during the celebration of Congo's independence? Let me play it out for you, just in case you forgot.
Congolais et Congolaises, combattants de l'indépendance, aujourd'hui victorieux, je vous salue au nom du gouvernement congolais. À vous tous, mes amis, qui avez lutté sans relâche à nos côtés, je vous demande de faire de ce 30 juillet 1960 une date illustre que vous garderez ineffaçablement gravée dans vos cœurs, une date dont vous enseignerez avec fierté la signification à vos enfants, pour que ceux-ci, à leur tour, fassent connaître à leurs fils et à leurs petits-fils l'histoire glorieuse de notre lutte pour la liberté. Car cette indépendance du Congo, si elle est proclamée aujourd'hui dans l'entente avec la Belgique, pays ami avec qui nous traitons d'égal à égal, ni les Congolais d'un de ces noms ne pourra jamais oublier cependant que c'est par la lutte qu'elle a été conquise. Une lutte de tous les jours, une lutte ardente et idéaliste, une lutte dans laquelle nous n'avons mélangé ni nos forces, ni nos privations, ni nos souffrances, ni notre sang. Cette lutte qui fit des larmes, des feux et des sang, nous en sommes fiers jusqu'au plus profond de nous-mêmes, car ce fut une lutte noble et juste, une lutte indispensable pour mettre fin à l'humiliant esclavage qui nous était imposé par la force. Ce qui fut notre sort à 80 ans de régime colonialiste, nos blessures sont trop fraîches et trop douloureuses encore pour que nous puissions les chasser de notre mémoire. Car nous avons connu le travail harassant, exigé en échange de salaires qui ne nous permettaient ni de manger à notre faim, ni de nous vêtir ou nous loger décemment, ni d'élever nos enfants comme des êtres chers. Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres. Qui oubliera qu'à un noir, on disait tu, non certes comme à un ami, mais parce que les voix honorables étaient réservées aux seuls blancs. Nous avons connu que nos terres furent spoliées au nom des textes prétendument légaux qui ne faisaient que reconnaître les droits du plus fort. Nous avons connu que la loi n'était jamais la même selon qu'il s'agissait des blancs ou des noirs, accommodante pour les uns, cruelle inhumaine pour les autres. Nous avons connu les souffrances atroces des relégués pour opinion politique ou croyances religieuses. Exilés dans leur propre patrie, leur sort était vraiment pire que la mort elle-même.
The Western world leaders present during that celebration felt that Lumumba was pro-Soviet and that they had to find a way to neutralize him. So, when Lumumba became Congo's prime minister in 1960, he would appoint Mobutu Sese Seko as the Secretary of the State to the presidency. On the 5th of July 1960, all hell broke loose, with soldiers demonstrating over the continued presence and influence of Belgians in Congo after the country had gained independence. The revolt, or mutiny, if you wish to call it, also involved low pay. The Western world felt that Lumumba was behind the mutiny, and ladies and gentlemen, that is when Lawrence, you can call him Larry, Devlin, stepped in. Lawrence Devlin, or Larry Devlin if you like, had been appointed as a CIA agent and was known to be tough. He knew which strings to pull to spread propaganda and antagonize an angel. In Devlin's mind, he felt that Lumumba was a dangerous man, not a communist, not a USSR agent, or in simple terms, Soviet agent, but could easily be influenced by the Soviets. And if the last statement was most likely to be true, he could easily interfere with West's exploitation of Congo. With that, Devlin would land in Congo on 20th of July 1960, and his propaganda against Lumumba would kickstart immediately. In order to succeed, Devlin would work with the greedy and easy to manipulate Congolese leaders, including Albert Kalonji, leader of the Balubas of South Kasai, Paul Bolia, a Mongol leader from Ecuador, Pierre Saumialot, Lumumba's own private secretary, the trade unionist Cyril Aduola, and above all, the man who would become one of his most loyal contacts, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Justin Bamboko. In leaked documents from Devlin to CIA headquarters, Devlin says, Patrice Lumumba was born to be a revolutionary, but he does not have the qualities to exercise power once he has seized it. Sooner or later, Moscow will take the reins. He believes he can manipulate the Soviets, but they are the ones pulling the strings. The CIA director at the time would write back to Devlin saying, if Lumumba continues to be in power, the result will be at least chaos and at worst an eventual seizure of power by communists, with disastrous consequences for the prestige of the UN and the interests of the free world. His dismissal must therefore be an urgent and priority objective for you. Like I told you earlier, Devlin, like his masters in the quotes, land of the free, knew which strings to pull. A budget of $100,000, which was a considerable amount at the time, would pay people to demonstrate against Patrice Lumumba. According to the protesters in quotes, Lumumba had undermined the country's president Kasavubu and organized demonstrations. Kasavubu, now with a reason, would fire Patrice Lumumba from the prime minister's position and replace him with Joseph Ileo, a big weakling with a huge appetite for public resources. It is criminal to mention the word corruption when dealing with some African leaders. Patrice Lumumba, like the revolutionary he was, would get the backing of the parliament, which left Kasavubu confused. Devlin held a meeting with Kasavubu to deliberate on how to handle the Lumumba mystery, but before the meeting could commence, Lumumba's secretary appeared. With a huge smile on his face, he would tell Devlin, I wanted to talk to you very much. He would continue, I'm tired of these political games. This is not how we are going to build a strong, independent and democratic Congo. The Soviets have invaded the country. Do you know that they sent a delegation to Camp Kokolo to teach Marxism to the soldiers and distribute their propaganda? They claim that you Westerners are plundering the Congo, whereas they are our real friends. I spoke to Lumumba about this. He told me to mind my own business. I gathered together my zone commanders. They all agreed with me, so let me be clear.
The army is ready to overthrow Lumumba and set up a transitional government made up of. Will the US help us?
Before Devlin and Kasavubu could believe what Mobutu had said, Minister Bamboko appeared from the back door. Is this a setup to eliminate us? The two wondered. But no, this time all stars were aligned in their favor. Bamboko handed a folded paper to Devlin, which was written, "Help him, help." Devlin assured Mobutu and Bamboko that the US would help the country attain a transitional government. Mobutu, the mysterious figure in the room, requested for an aid.
I need $5,000 for my soldiers. If the coup fails, their families will be left penniless.
The request was granted. On the 14th of September, Congo was weeping. Its leader, Patrice Lumumba, was ousted and arrested. He was treated like a stray dog, beaten up and killed by a firing squad, together with Joseph Okito and Maurice Mpolo.
His way to Stanleyville and flew him back. Patrice Lumumba securely wrote. And with him were men who served in his cabinet when he was Prime Minister. They were bundled into a heavily guarded lorry and driven off towards a place called Binza. Lumumba had been under house arrest, protected by UN troops in Leopoldville, when he escaped. His recapture was quite a triumph for Colonel Mobutu, who now saw his enemy arise. Lumumba's bonds are tightened. They were taking no chances. And his wife and child watch his humiliation. The whole affair, of course, serves to underline once again the conditions prevailing in the Congo. It's not enough to arrest a man. He must apparently be beaten up as well. Then put him on trial later, no doubt. As for Mobutu's troops, they yelled and danced with joy. They had won a great victory. They'd got Lumumba after trying to lay their hands on him for months.
The orders to kill Lumumba were given by Mobutu Sese Seko, Belgium police inspection, France Fasashua, and GATT. The three would be tied against a tree and shot one at a time on the 17th of January 1961. Lumumba's death would not be announced until weeks later. But there were rumors. Yes, rumors. Katanga's Secretary of State Information, Lucas Samalenge, drunk in power and alcohol, would go to a bar and tell anyone who wanted to listen that Lumumba had been murdered, and he, Samalenge, kicked his corpse. But since he always spoke those words in a drunken stupor, no one believed him. On 20th of February, information from the national radio would announce that Patrice Lumumba, Maurice Mpolo, and Joseph Okito had escaped prison. On the 13th of February 1961, the Katanga radio would announce that the trio were caught by villagers while trying to escape, and they were killed. But let us rewind back to the true story of Lumumba's death. I told you that Lumumba was killed on 17th of January 1961, right? On the 18th of January, a day after Lumumba and his colleagues were shot dead, the people who carried out the assassination panicked. They exhumed the bodies and moved them near North Rhodesia, which is the present-day Zambia. On the 21st, 3 days later, Commissioner Soete, out of guilt, would have Lumumba's body exhumed again, cut into pieces with a hacksaw, and dissolved in sulfuric acid. The Belgian officials in Congo and Brussels would later on snitch on themselves about their involvement in the death of Patrice Lumumba. I failed to inform you that as Mobutu was having Lumumba arrested, Kasavubu was not spared. He would be put under house arrest but later released. Mobutu, who had now become a colonel, called the shots. He would militarily take over Congo, exile Kasavubu, and become the Congo president in 1965. As an authoritarian, Mobutu changed Congo to become Zaire. He would also change other names and events to fit his thoughts. Leopoldville would be changed to Kinshasa, which is the capital city of Congo. Elizabethville would be changed to Lubumbashi, and the Christmas celebration would be moved from December to June. Would anyone be punished for defying these orders? Absolutely. Any priest found guilty of giving Zairean child a European name during baptism would be jailed for 5 years. Before we proceed, make sure you have subscribed to this channel. Leading by example, Mobutu would change his name to Mobutu Sese Seko Nkuku Bedu wa Zabanga, which is loosely translated to the all-powerful warrior who, because of his endurance and inflexible will to win, goes from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in his wake. Mobutu would make Zaire a one-man show. He would execute anyone who not only threatened his leadership, but thought of criticizing his role. His victims included Zaire's former Prime Minister, Evariste Kimba, and 3 cabinet secretaries. Alexander Mahamba, the Minister of Mines and Energy, Emmanuel Bamba, the Minister of Finance, and finally Jerome Anany, the Minister of Defense. According to Mobutu, the 3 had been in contact with Colonel Alphonse Bangala and Major Pierre Efomi, planning to overthrow him. In front of 50,000 people, the 3 were executed. Another person who was killed mercilessly was Pierre Molele, a rebel leader during the infamous Samba Rebellion in 1964. So in 1968, Molele would be lured from exile in the neighboring Brazzaville, with Mobutu's close friends promising him amnesty upon his return to Zaire. Molele would be captured, tortured, beaten up, half his eyes gouged out, his genitals ripped off, and his limbs amputated one by one. Mobutu's execution received international condemnation and made him take a step back. He adopted a new strategy to silence his perceived enemies by buying them. Mobutu's mantra was, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer still. Mobutu would nationalize all farms owned by foreigners in the country and chase the foreigner investors away. He would appoint his close friends and family to manage these businesses, while they would loot them to the ground. The country would almost come to a standstill, forcing Mobutu to call the same investors he had chased away them back to the country. In one candidate elections, Mobutu would continually be elected Zaire's president. He would celebrate the win and continue to milk Zaire. It is estimated that by 1984, Mobutu's wealth was estimated to be around $5 billion, which was equivalent to Zaire's foreign debt at the time. He also owned a huge fleet of Mercedes-Benz cars, palaces, and other luxurious things. That was at the expense of Zaire's dilapidated economy. In 1990, Mobutu's pressure of managing Zaire was taking a toll on him, making him soften his stance and allow democracy to set in Congo. In 1994, Rwandan rebels sneaked into Zaire following the Rwandan genocide refugees. The rebels would create a loophole for the rise of internal insurgents, and several rebel groups would rise in Zaire. In 1996, Mobutu would be diagnosed with prostate cancer, which weakened him. A year later, while Mobutu was receiving treatment in Morocco, Laurent Desire Kabila would successfully conduct a coup d'etat and become the country's president. Immediately, Kabila would change the country's name to the Democratic Republic of Congo. When Mobutu learned about the coup d'etat, he left Morocco into exile in Togo. But Togo's president at the time, Gnassingbé Eyadema, instructed that Mobutu leaves his country immediately. He would return to Morocco, where he would die on the September 7, 1997. He would secretly be buried in Morocco in a humble grave, which contrasted the vast life he lived back in Zaire, or the present-day Democratic Republic of Congo.